Standard ni wadhamini wakuu katika kongamano hili la uwekezaji. Kama alivyokujuzeni awali, mtazamaji, jicho letu liko katika mahakama ya Milimani ya ufisadi, ambapo kesi inayomkabili naibu jaji mkuu Philomena Mwilu itakuwa inasikilizwa. Kumbuka mtazamaji, Mwilu alikamatwa mnamo Agosti mwaka jana kuhusiana na madai ya ubadhirifu wa mali, utumizi mbaya wa ofisi na vile ufisadi katika mahakama kuu. Ni kesi ambayo itakuwa inasikilizwa kuona iwapo ataruhusiwa kuwa upande wa mashtaka Kahawar Quresh ambaye ni wakili na mwanasheria kutoka Uingereza. Kumbuka mapema ama mwishoni mwaka jana alikuwa amekataliwa na mawakili wake Philomena Mwilu wakiongozwa na James Orengo, ambaye kwa sasa hivi anatoa wasilisho zake katika mahakama hii kuona iwapo ataendelea kukataliwa, maana walisema hafai kuja hapa Kenya na kuweza kuendesha kesi. Hebu tukupeleke kule tusikize kesi hii inavyokwenda.
And that brings me then to the Public Procurement Act. And in this regard, I wanted to point to the court, and this court should take judicial notice that there are so many Kenyans now, and this court itself is dealing with many cases regarding persons who are accused or willfully or carelessly not following procurement procedures. The Director of Public Prosecution sees of such cases that somebody has not followed guidelines, the law, procedures, and guidelines. Now, if you look at the guidelines, you know, first of all, the Director of Public Prosecution is not telling us which is the method that he preferred to use under the Act, because the Act sets out different methods for procurement. And my ladies and my lord, that is found in Part 9 from Section 91 of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. My lord, looking at the record, there are only two alternatives that the DPP could use. That is direct procurement in relation to professional services. And that requires that if a direct method has to be used, he must fulfill the requirements of Section 103, which are spelled out in extenso, circumstances which would require, would enable somebody to procure services. And that would be in circumstances where there's urgency, which are not foreseeable by the procuring entity, or in circumstances where there's a war and so on. I'll let the court look at it. But looking at the reasons that he gave, none of them satisfy the requirements under the Public Procurement Act in regard to procurement of professional services or any services. And if he regarded this engagement of services as a mere consultancy, then he was required to follow Part 10 of the Act, and particularly Section 124, subsection 12. But all in all, throughout the Public Procurement Act, there is a need where there's an approval. Yes, this is 124, subsection 12. That is when the services required consultancy services. I'm saying if this is what they say Mr. Kurishi is doing, but as far as we're concerned, is providing a service which should have come under Section 103. But that subsection deals with single source selection where appropriate. And it requires that there must be a written justification that falls within the ambit of the provisions of this Act. And the Act throughout, the Procurement Act throughout, as it flows from the Constitution, that nothing should be done that would inhibit fairness, competitiveness, and the other thresholds which are found in Article 227 of the Constitution. By the way, what we are trying to argue before my ladies and lordships are based on the Constitution, the issues of procurement. And 227 sub Article 1 says, when a state organ or any other public entity contracts for goods or services, it shall do so in accordance with a system that is fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective. Now, looking at what we have before you, my ladies and lordships, have these constitutional thresholds been met? If you are to ask the question, was the issue of gender, if you look at the Act itself, it talks about the issue of gender, was that addressed? The issue of indigenous contractors, was that addressed? And youth, all that is contained in the I've very little time, but if you look at the provisions of the Act, they run through the provisions of the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. And thirdly is a question as to whether or not he satisfied the Immigration Act. Is on a special pass, but already if you look at the documents that are available, the special pass that is attached, and the fact that he didn't pay any fee, and in accordance to the regulations, that exemption can only be given by a cabinet secretary. There is no evidence that the cabinet secretary gave such exemption. If a Kenyan has to pay, when an exemption is given to a non-Kenyan, it should be justified. We are law of nations, transparency, and accountability. I have 2 minutes. My Lord, my last point is this. And this is why I really think that this matter is even far more important than the issues that I'm addressing at the moment. But in the very creation of the office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. My Lord, I remember at one time I was trying to look for the authority in which Lord Denning dealt with as to the question of independence of contract judges. In view of security of tenure, Lord Denning was arguing a contract judge cannot fully satisfy the requirements of independence in exercising the office of a judge. Now I'm saying, because the powers that Professor Qureshi is supposed to exercise, they are to do with prosecutions, and they are delegated powers which you have spelled out. A person who is exercising such a power and engage on contract, would he be able to apply the law in accordance with the requirements of the principles of our criminal justice system without fearing that his contract may be terminated? And
My Lord, I hope I'll also be given 23 minutes.
No,
23. Yes, 15 plus 7 is 22.
yes.
Now he's at the 23rd minute.
So it's 25.
No, it can't be. It's 22.
No problem. Yeah, so my Lord, I'm not quite a robot, but I'll try to stop there just by saying, yes, we have to look at the creation of that office of the DPP. And in this kind of circumstances is where the DPP, if he fears that he cannot find a lawyer out there or in his office, he should have appeared here, because he enjoyed a protection that no other advocate, no other person enjoys except him. If all these things he's saying in his letter are true, then he should be the person. Those are the good reasons why he should be here in person. I'm a lady now. If you look at the letter by the Attorney General, well, the Attorney General seems to be saying, yes, you can practice. But the Attorney General says you can practice Yes, yes. If you look at the letter dated 5th December 2018, the Attorney General says, go ahead, but it must be in accordance with the Advocates Act. And it is only connected to the matters connected to the proceedings. And secondly, Mr. Qureshi is required to maintain, that is the Attorney General, a valid practicing certificate for the duration of the retainer. And in our submission, that practicing certificate cannot be a certificate of the English bar.
Why not? It's ridiculous.
Because the Attorney General has already given admission to be in the role of advocate, as a foreign advocate, that the Attorney General has dealt with. But I say, I've admitted you, but you must have a practicing certificate for the duration of the retainer. Now, we may try to sift through the law, but if you read the law holistically, it was a matter that is not a matter of discretion, but Mr. Qureshi should have secured a practicing certificate for the duration of this retainer. And with that, my lady and my lords, we pray that this application be, all its people be granted. And pray that we rise up to the words in our Constitution that we are sovereign people, and that sovereignty can only be exercised, yes, to offices that are delegated powers, which include the powers of the Executive Public. Thank you.
Did you get that? Yes. Part 7 of the Act that deals with that.
My ladies and my lords, Senator Eric Okongo Mugeni, Senior Counsel, is the advocate on record for the petitioner. He has been on record since the 29th of August 2018 when this matter was filed. Senator James Orengo, Senior Counsel, is the lead counsel in this matter. He has also been on record from that date. The request by the DPP to bar the two counsels from appearing is based on the claim that there is a conflict of interest. That conflict of interest is alleged to arise from the appearance by the two counsel in the Senate committee in which it is claimed.
Na mtazamaji, ni mojawapo tu wa wale mawakili ambao walishukuliwa na naibu jaji mkuu Philomena Mwilu kati ya wale 32 ambao wanafaa kuwasilisha hoja hapa mahakamani katika mahakama ya Milimani kuhusiana na madai yanayomkabili ya ufisadi. Kumbuka Bi Philomena Mwilu alikamatwa Agosti tarehe 28 mwaka jana kwa madai ya ubadhirifu wa fedha na matumizi mabaya ya afisi, ikiwemo kukwepa ushuru na vile kutumia dhamana kilaghai kutoka benki ya Imperial. Kesi hii inaendelea wakati ambapo vile kuna vuta nkuvute, mtazamaji, kuhusiana na kutumika kwa huyu wakili kutoka Uingereza katika kesi hii, Bwana Hawar Quresh, ambaye kama ilivyowasilishwa pale na kiongozi wa jopo hili la mawakili 32 James Orengo kwamba alifaa kuwa na cheti maalum cha kuweza kufanyia kazi hapa nchini kwa mujibu wa ombi ama pendekezo ambalo lilitolewa na mwanasheria mkuu Paul Kihara, na hivyo basi kuzua utata. Vile James Orengo amegusia hoja mbalimbali ambazo zimejitokeza katika kesi hii, kama mshiko ambao uko katika kosa ambalo linamkabili la mchakato wa ununuzi ambao inasemekana kwamba ulikuwa mbaya, na akatoa hoja kwamba hakuna sheria ambayo inaonyesha kwamba alikiuka maadili na mwongozo na mchakato mzima wa ununuzi, kama kutozingatia kipengee cha jinsia katika ununuzi. Mtazamaji, ni kesi ambayo tunaifuatilia toka tunaona inakwenda namna gani, kesi ambayo ilimfanya mwendesha mashtaka ya umma Nurdin Haji kufika mbele ya kamati ya Seneti mwaka jana mwishoni na kutetea msimamo wake na uamuzi wake wa kuweza kumwalika Bwana Quresh kuweza kuja kusaidia katika kesi hii. Kwa hivyo mtazamaji, mbali na huko, Kunazo taarifa mbalimbali ambazo tunazifuatilia, ikiwemo kufuatilia kinachoendelea katika eneo la Riverside kulikotokea shambulizi. Shadrack Miti yuko kule, lakini kabla